The little boy's hands wouldn't stop shaking. His small fingers twisted the seatbelt buckle over and over, eyes darting to the window every few seconds. 30-year-old Claire Bennett noticed him from 2 rows ahead. Pale face, red hoodie, no adult beside him. When the flight attendant crouched to ask if he was okay, he just whispered, "My dad said he'll be waiting. But what if he forgets?" Claire's chest tightened. She smiled gently, unbuckled, and slid into the empty seat next to him. "Hey, champ," she said softly. "You like drawing?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. "Perfect," she said, pulling a pen from her tote. "Let's draw the clouds we're flying through. That way, when we land, your dad can see how brave you were." That tiny smile, shaky but real, was the start of something neither of them could have imagined. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The engines roared as the plane lifted into the clouds. Claire adjusted her seatbelt, pretending not to notice the tremor in the boy's breathing. The cabin lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the passengers. Somewhere behind them, a baby cried. But right beside her, the world had shrunk to the trembling hands of a little boy gripping his napkin like it was a lifeline. "You're doing great," she murmured, leaning closer so he could hear over the rumble. "I'm Claire. What's your name?" He swallowed hard. "Oliver." "That's a strong name," she said with a grin. "You know, pilots always trust guys named Oliver. It's a lucky name." He gave a tiny laugh. The first one. As the plane hit a small bump, he stiffened again, and she reached out instinctively, her hand resting gently on his arm. "Hey, it's okay. Planes do this all the time. It's like a bird stretching its wings." He blinked at her, curious despite his fear. "You're not scared?" She smiled faintly. "I used to be. I once flew during a thunderstorm. I thought the plane would break apart." "What happened?" "I met someone kind. They told me that when you help someone else stay calm, you forget to be scared yourself." Oliver studied her like she was telling a secret only for him. "That's what you're doing?" She nodded. "Exactly." He hesitated, then whispered, "My mom used to hold my hand on flights, but she's gone now. My dad, he's always working." The words came out so quietly she barely heard them. Claire's chest ached. She didn't try to fill the silence with pity. She just said softly, "That's tough, kid. But you've got her courage, I can tell." He tilted his head. "How?" She smiled. "You got on this plane anyway." For a while they drew together, crooked airplanes, clumsy clouds, even a lopsided sun peeking from behind one wing. The napkin became their little sky. Then, halfway through the flight, the turbulence worsened. The lights flickered, and a gasp rippled through the cabin. Oliver's small hand grabbed hers tightly. "It's okay," she said quickly, steady voice masking her own jolt of fear. "We're still in the sky, still flying. You hear that hum? That's the sound of everything working exactly how it should." He closed his eyes and leaned against her shoulder. "You promise we won't fall?" Claire squeezed his hand. "I promise. We're not falling. We're flying through something that's just testing us a little. And you, my friend, are doing great." Minutes passed before the turbulence eased and the seatbelt light dimmed again. The flight attendant walked by, giving Claire a grateful nod. She'd noticed. By the time the captain announced their descent, Oliver had stopped fidgeting. His eyes were brighter now, curious instead of afraid. "Look," he said proudly, holding up his napkin. "That's us, the brave ones." Claire's smile warmed. That's right. And when we land, you'll show your dad how brave you've been. He beamed. He's gonna be proud. As the plane touched down, the cabin erupted in claps, the usual cheer after a smooth landing. But for Claire, the applause meant something different. She looked at the boy beside her, this quiet, lonely kid who'd just faced the sky and won, and realized it had been years since she'd felt this kind of purpose. When they stood to leave, Oliver held her hand again. "Will I see you again?" Claire hesitated, then smiled softly. "The world's small, kid. You never know." But something inside her whispered she already would. The jet bridge buzzed with noise, luggage wheels clattering, phones ringing, people reuniting with hugs and shouts. Claire guided Oliver through the crowd, his small hand tucked inside hers. The boy craned his neck, scanning every face that passed, shoulders tightening each time someone else was greeted. Then she noticed it. A man standing alone near the barrier. Gray suit, loosened tie, phone in hand. His posture screamed control, but his eyes told another story. Tired, searching, guilty. "Dad!" Oliver shouted suddenly, his voice slicing through the crowd. The man's head snapped up. For a second, disbelief froze him in place. Then his phone dropped into his pocket, and he stepped forward fast, relief flooding his face. But before Oliver ran off, he looked up at Claire. "Will you come?" She blinked. "You sure?" "Yeah," he said firmly, gripping her hand tighter. "You helped me fly." They approached together. When the man saw her, confusion flickered across his features. "You were on the flight with him?" Claire nodded. "He was sitting alone. I just kept him company." The man crouched, wrapping Oliver in a hug so tight it almost made Claire look away. "You okay, buddy?" Oliver's voice was muffled in his father's jacket. "I wasn't at first, but she helped me." The man straightened, clearing his throat. "I'm Ethan Collins," he said, offering his hand. "You must be an angel or something." Claire laughed softly, shaking it. "Hardly. I just had a pen and a napkin." Ethan's gaze lingered, steady, appreciative. "Still, thank you. He's been through more than a kid should. His mom passed last year. First solo flight since then." Claire's smile faltered. "I didn't know. He's brave, you know. Scared, but brave." Ethan looked down at his son, who was now tugging at his sleeve, proudly showing the napkin drawing. "She helped me draw us, Dad. We're not scared anymore." Ethan's eyes softened, but a shadow crossed them too. The kind that belonged to someone who'd spent too long drowning in work to avoid grief. "He hasn't drawn anything in months," he admitted quietly. "I didn't even think he'd board that flight." Claire said gently, "He needed to feel someone was there. Sometimes that's all it takes." Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I should have been there. I kept telling myself work was for him, for our future. But I've missed so much of his now." "You're here," she said simply. "Start there." For a moment, silence hung between them, filled only by the hum of airport noise. Then Ethan cleared his throat. "Can I at least buy you a coffee? It's the least I can do." Claire smiled. "Only if it's not that watered-down airport stuff." He chuckled, genuine this time. "Deal." They sat near the cafe window, steam curling between them. Oliver sipped orange juice, focused on coloring the airplane he'd drawn earlier. Claire watched him quietly. "You're good with him," Ethan said, his tone softer now. "He usually doesn't talk to anyone." "Maybe he just needed someone who wasn't rushing," she said. "Kids can tell when you're really listening." He nodded slowly. "I forgotten how to do that? Everything's been a blur since my wife. He stopped himself, staring down at his coffee. Sorry. You don't need my life story. It's okay, she said, her voice steady. Sometimes strangers are the safest people to talk to. No expectations. He looked up at her. Really looked this time. You sound like you've been there. Claire hesitated, then smiled faintly. Everyone's been there, one way or another. Oliver suddenly interrupted, holding up his napkin masterpiece. Dad, look. Miss Claire drew the wings better than me. Ethan laughed softly. I don't know, buddy. I think you nailed it. Then, turning back to her, he hasn't smiled like that in a year. You don't know what that means to me. She shrugged, brushing off the emotion she felt rising in her chest. He did the hard part. I just sat beside him. When it was time to leave, Ethan stood awkwardly, like he didn't want the moment to end. Claire, you're not from around here, are you? She shook her head. Just passing through. Business trip. He hesitated, then pulled a small card from his wallet. In case you ever need anything, or if you just want to grab coffee again sometime. Off the plane, I mean. Claire took it, reading the embossed name, Ethan Collins. Collins Logistics. The kind of title that belonged to someone who'd built an empire but forgotten how to rest inside it. Thanks, she said quietly. As they parted, Oliver waved from his dad's side. Bye, Miss Claire. Bye, buddy, she called, smiling. But as she walked toward baggage claim, she glanced down at the crumpled napkin in her hand, the one Oliver had drawn a spare copy of just in case. The stick figures, the cloud, the little plane, and under it, a tiny scrawl in pencil. For the lady who made me brave. Claire stood still for a long time in that busy terminal, the noise of the world moving around her, realizing that sometimes kindness wasn't a grand gesture. Sometimes it was just being there when someone needed to believe they weren't alone. 2 weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Claire sat by her apartment window with a cup of coffee and her laptop open. She was halfway through replying to a client email when the notification pinged. An unfamiliar name in her inbox, Ethan Collins. Her eyebrows lifted. For a second, she thought it might be a work message, but when she opened it, her heart stalled. Subject, you made a difference, Body. Hi, Claire. Oliver still talks about you every single day. He made me frame the napkin drawing you helped him with. He says you made the sky less scary. If you're ever in Chicago again, we'd love to see you. I owe you more than just coffee. Ethan and Oliver. She read it twice, then again. The words were simple, but they hit somewhere deep. The kind of place she didn't realize had gone quiet long ago. She replied before she could overthink it. I'll actually be in Chicago next week for work. Maybe we could meet for dinner. Tell Oliver I still have his drawings twin. The reply came within minutes. He just screamed when I read that. Friday night, 6 p.m.? The restaurant was a cozy place tucked off Michigan Avenue, all warm light and low chatter. When Claire walked in, Oliver spotted her first. Miss Claire, he shouted, leaping from his seat and nearly knocking over his soda. She laughed as he barreled into her. You grew taller already. Ethan stood up smiling, less tired this time, more alive. He's been counting the days, he said. And so have I. Then I'm glad I came, she said, sliding into the booth. Dinner felt easy, laughter over pizza, Oliver proudly explaining how he'd started drawing again. Dad bought me real sketchbooks, he said. I'm going to make a whole sky. Series. Claire smiled. That's amazing, Oliver. You've got an artist's heart. Ethan leaned back, studying her quietly. "He hasn't been this happy in years," he said softly. "You did more for him in 2 hours than I've managed in 12 months. She looked up. "You're doing it now," she said gently. "You're showing up." For a moment, silence hung between them. Comfortable, meaningful. After dinner, they stepped outside into the crisp night air. Streetlights flickered across a wet pavement, and the sound of a saxophone drifted from somewhere nearby. Oliver ran ahead, hopping over puddles. Ethan watched him, then glanced at her. "You know," he said quietly, "I spent years believing success could fix everything. Money, time, grief, all of it. But when I saw Oliver on that flight log alone, I realized I'd been trying to buy peace instead of finding it." Claire met his gaze. "Peace isn't bought, Ethan. It's built, one moment at a time. You're building it now." He smiled faintly, maybe with a little help. Her cheeks warmed under the streetlight. "I'm just the passenger who shared a pen." "Passengers don't change the whole flight," he said. "You did." The weeks that followed brought quiet, unexpected changes. Claire started joining Ethan and Oliver for dinners when she was in town. Sometimes they went to the park, sometimes to the art museum. Oliver's confidence grew, his laughter louder, his drawings bolder. One evening, as the three of them watched airplanes arc across the sunset sky, Oliver tugged her sleeve. "Miss Claire, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I'm not scared of flying anymore," he said proudly, "'cause I know brave people sit next to me." She felt her throat tighten as she smiled. "Then I guess the world's a lot safer now." Ethan watched them both, quiet for a long moment. "You know," he said finally, "it's funny. I spent so long trying to give Oliver the world. Turns out he just needed someone to believe in him. She turned to him, and maybe you needed the same." He held her gaze. "Maybe I did." For the first time in years, Claire felt something she hadn't in forever. Stillness. Not the quiet of loneliness, but of peace. A sense that life, in all its chaos, had finally drawn her to the right gate. Months later, Oliver stood on a stage at his school's art show, holding up his framed napkin drawing for the crowd. His voice trembled, but his smile never wavered. "This," he said proudly, "is me and Miss Claire. She helped me not be afraid of flying. And now my dad says we're all flying again, just in a different way." The audience laughed warmly. Ethan stood beside Claire, whispering, "He insisted you be here. Said you're part of the reason he believes good people still exist." Claire's eyes misted as she looked at the boy who once trembled at takeoff. "He's proof they do," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "You changed both our lives. And for that..." He hesitated, voice low. "Thank you." She smiled. "No, Ethan. Thank you for letting kindness keep going." And as Oliver's painting took its place under a soft beam of light, Claire realized that sometimes the smallest moments, a napkin drawing, a seat change, a hand held mid-flight, were the ones that quietly rewrote lives forever.